All right. So we're here today with Jeff Uherek, who's the CEO of GrowthSpoke. Jeff, first off, thank you very much for taking the time. I guess to get things started, why don't you kind of explain to us a little bit about what you guys do over at GrowthSpoke, what your focus is on 2026. Just give us a quick little overview about what you guys do.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for letting us be here. Super honored to not only partner with WearMatch, but have this opportunity to connect with you and your audience. GrowthSpoke's a full omni-channel 3PL based here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We take a much different approach to fulfillment in that we look for three different types of brands out there. Brands that are starting up or quickly emerging. Brands that have outgrown self-fulfillment or outgrown the garage. And typically what we see in these brands is that we find during the growth cycle that founders are working more in the business than on the business, and sales tend to plateau. So we'd love to free them up from the daily operations side of things and be able to focus all of their energy and creativity on growth. And lastly, brands that are launching into North America for the first time. So brands that have been successful in the EU or overseas that are ready to open up the North American market. We partner with a lot of brands that come to the U.S. and Canada and Mexico for the first time. We take a very different approach to fulfillment in the fact that we're a very human company. We believe in the word partnership heavily and enjoy daily collaboration with our brand partners. We're not a 3PL to where you need to fit into our box in order for us to work with you. We will design your own box around your individual needs as a brand, no matter where you're at in your life cycle. Our focuses for 2026 are mainly around direct-to-consumer brands and brands that require kitting or subscription box services. So we've grown substantially in the last 24 months with a number of different subscription box brands that are pumping out anywhere from 5,000 to 50,000 different boxes or units per month. And that model's changing month after month after month. So we really enjoy the aspect of kitting. And it sets us apart a little bit in the fact that a lot of my corporate big box competitors are replacing humans with robots. And I have yet to find a robot that can kit. So we continue to invest in our people and our processes and technology. And so we have a very strong appetite for startups and brands that require a heavy amount of kitting.
Okay. And typically, how do customers typically find you? Is it kind of very referral based? Is it through online searches?
Yeah, so we add on average about 7 new brands per month. And we do all of that with a very limited marketing budget, which I'm quite proud of. Like our average CAC per customer is less than $100.
Wow.
And the reason we're so successful in that is most of the brands that find us are looking for a 3PL or a fulfillment partner that can come in at the very early stages of their growth. We're not going after the multi-billion-dollar brands. There are other 3PLs in the space that have multi-node distribution and are just set up better to handle the big boys of the world. We're really focusing in on those startups and those brands that have outgrown the garage or their first warehouse. So while there's a lot of 3PLs in the space right now, and it is a saturated market, we kind of find our own niche in the startup and emerging brand space. So a lot of those times, those brands are reaching out to us. We're also pretty heavily referral based in terms of a brand or a supply chain manager or co-man or co-packer is referring them to us. We work with a lot of local and I'd say Midwest-based bottlers, co-packers, co-manufacturers, and we're blessed to be in West Michigan to where we've got a lot of manufacturing here. So a lot of our referrals come from companies that are right down the road from us. And lastly, we partner with organizations like WearMatch that where brands are specifically looking for a 3PL and they can come into a database and search specifically what they're looking for and be matched with us. So it's one of the things we're most excited for about WearMatch is the platform that you guys have built and are consistently improving upon.
So to your point, kind of about the notion that the 3PL market is very saturated, and using a platform like ours kind of helps specify your niche and have brands ultimately reach out kind of based on what you can actually service. Why do you think that ability to call it articulate what you can offer is very far behind and not a lot of 3PLs are successful in doing it?
I think a lot of 3PLs today stand on metrics alone, right? I can sit here and tell you that I've got a 99.99% accuracy rate and a 99.98% on time rate and shrinkage rates and blah, 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 blah. The reality is that we all do, right? There are definitely 3PLs out there that make far more mistakes than others. And we're happy to take on their clients, but we really, really pride ourselves on the human connection element in partnering together. We want a seat at our brand's table. We want to know in advance what they're working on, what their strategies are, what their goals are, so that we can help them grow. It's really simple math to me, Matt. The more product someone sells, the more product we ship. So how do we engage together to not only control costs and improve efficiencies, but how do we partner with a brand to really help drive sales or identify new markets? So we're really excited to be creating an ecosystem where a brand can come in no matter what their stage of growth is and be supported by GrowthSpoke in areas other than just fulfillment. We've got that piece down packed, right? Orders come in, we pick them and pack them efficiently and ship them out on time. That's the easy stuff. The difficulty is when things don't go right, when there's a kink in the supply chain, when data is transmitted incorrectly, or when someone comes into a role that they haven't been in before because they've been promoted, or they've had to fill in for someone that's either been terminated or left. That's where we really come in and wrap our arms around our partners and say, hey, we're here to help. We may not be able to solve your challenges, but we're willing to sit at the table with you and work through it together. So that back and forth dialogue, that true partnership is something that I think really sets us apart and something I'm really, really proud that our team does well. We don't charge for customer service. We call it success management. We don't charge for those daily interactions. We don't charge by the number of calls or tickets that come in. We're here to support our brands, whether that means we're talking to them 15 times a day or once a quarter.
So it's interesting you mentioned kind of that last bit. I wanted to bring this a little bit more in terms of the actual pricing, right? So we just spoke about the fact that 3PLs have a tendency, or not have a tendency, but generally are very, they're very relationship driven, and B, what I find, I'm sure you agree, is pricing is always very scope dependent, right? For a 3PL, they're never going to have standardized rates. It's very difficult to do so. With that being said, a lot of customers, when they're sourcing different 3PL providers, when they're comparing options, their ultimately prices, let's face it, is usually the number one driver, right? Do you think that pricing will ever kind of be something that is standardized within the industry? If so, why or why not? And kind of what would be the fallout from a 3PL perspective if it just becomes an incredibly price-driven, standardized thing where 3PLs are solely competing in terms of price?
I think we're already there, to tell you the truth. I mean, price is always the first question, or it's one of the first questions. And I think it's important to understand how successful relationships work. We need our partnerships to be a win-win situation. If the brand is winning and the 3PL is losing, they're gonna be sacrificing quality and service. There's that old adage, price, quality, service. You only get two. That's it. There is no situation that's ever existed in the world where someone can have all three. So what are you willing to give up a little bit? And I think the conversations around pricing are successful when there's education involved. So it's important for us to not only be transparent with our brand partners. This is where we make our money. This is where we break even. This is where we lose. And I need you to understand that, because in order to turn one dial down, you may have to turn another dial up. So understanding and really getting into the data for our brands and saying, listen, you're looking to control shipping costs. Well, that may not be me reducing my margin on shipping. That may be us figuring out better mailers or better packaging to reduce cubic density to allow shipping rates to come down. That may, allow us to say, hey, we should do some zone skipping, or we should do some dynamic pricing analysis for you. It's usually around shipping, and shipping costs are the one thing that's going to continually to go up. Every year we see anywhere from 4.6 to 5.9, 6.9% increases. That's not going to change. So there are other ways to control costs without just simply giving a discount or chopping it off. So for us regarding pricing, I would say that we fall middle of the road for pricing. We're typically not the lowest, and we're typically not the highest. But we base our pricing on a case by case basis, and that could be their storage footprint, that could be the number of SKUs, that could be daily order volume, items per order. There's a lot that goes into that. But having those conversations with a brand that's looking is incredibly important to me. I will never, ever send out a blanket rate or blanket proposal without having a conversation. If someone's unwilling to talk to me and explain their business and their goals to me, we're not going to submit pricing.
I wanted to touch on the education aspect a little bit more. I find that very interesting. And I know in our previous conversations, we've talked about there being kind of a disconnect between 3PLs and brands, whether that's in terms of different lingo or jargon, the way that they articulate their project needs, etc. What do you guys focus on? Like when you're reaching out to potential brands, and when brands are reaching out to you, how do you kind of mitigate that disconnect in terms of kind of education or knowledge on the industry? Say it's a heavy e-commerce brand, they do a lot of drop shipping. They don't really know exactly what a 3PL does or what a 3PL could do. How do you best articulate everything that you can offer to them in a way that's very clear for them to understand?
That's a great question. I think a lot of that has to do with the initial discovery and kind of our sales process. We're really successful in when we engage with that brand right up front, ask questions that other 3PL candidates aren't asking, and really just try to drive into their business. So not only what are you doing now, what's not working or what can be improved upon, but where are we going in the future? How is your business going to evolve? And let's have some of those proactive conversations right up front, to where we can identify either challenges coming down the road or pitfalls that they might be stuck in. And a lot of that is just explaining the industry to your average D2C brand, unless you're a really sophisticated enterprise level brand, doesn't understand all of the that package from when that inventory first arrives at our warehouse to when it goes out the door. There's a lot of touch points. And then once it goes out the door, we essentially take our hands off the wheel, and all that trust is placed in the freight partner. So that customer, and then also digging into their customer experience goals. So what do you want that experience, that buying experience, to be like for your partner or for your customer? And that we get engaged in a lot of, whether or not we're sending out a tracking email or we're sending out different marketing follow-ups. helping that brand to understand that, hey, you paid to bring someone to your website. Let's capture them as a customer, but here are all the different ways to increase their order value along the way. And here's some ideas to bring them back. And when they come back, spend even more.
So I guess my next question, you mentioned how you work with freight providers. You're not actually the ones handling the goods from that, call it that last mile. Do you find, or let me rephrase this in a way. There's a lot of different partners when you're looking at one company's supply chain. Say you're working with a brand, you're 3PL. There's a lot of different heads at the table, if you will. How do you ultimately control that whole process? What information is being shared with the customer, call it at first, during that first interaction of like all the stakeholders involved? How do you as a 3PL kind of control that process in a way, right? When you've got too many heads at the table, let's say you're doing a group project and there's 7 people on the team, there's a lot more back and forth than if there's, call it 3 or 4. So how do you manage that relationship between all of the stakeholders involved, make it as efficient as possible, but also being as transparent as possible with information without it being too much of a headache for everyone?
Yeah, great question. I think for us, it's really important to understand what each stakeholder cares about, because they all care about different things. You may have someone in finance that's just looking at numbers all day. You may have someone on the customer service side that really cares about, that orders go out, they go out successfully. How do we deal with a claim? How do we deal with, a wrong address in the system, a package arriving being damaged? What's the return or replacement process look like? We may have the founder that all they care about is the open experience. So when the customer gets that package, what's their experience look like for them? So we really just try to identify what each stakeholder or person at the table truly cares about, and then we pair them up with other people in our organization to best serve them.
Okay. And I guess to go even further, can you think of any examples, recent example, take the last couple of customers you've worked with where you've had a little bit of an obstacle within that whole kind of management of kind of all the parties involved, and what did you do to almost resolve it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to sit up here and tell you that we're perfect 100% of the time and we never make mistakes. We had one of our largest subscription box providers early this week who sell their products on a marketplace, and you're able to purchase a subscription on this marketplace, but when you do that, there's not a unique SKU assigned to that month's box. And they entered into this marketplace last month, and for example, when last month their first box would have been the January box, and this month when the orders were placed, the customers received the December box instead of the January box. And there was a script that needed to be written throughout the order process that everyone was unaware of. And so we shipped 150 boxes in duplicate to the same customer. So 150 customers got 2 boxes instead of 1, and they were the wrong month's box. This wasn't our fault. This wasn't our partner's fault. It was just something that was missed during this setup. So our team stayed late that day, repackaged all of the orders, dropped them off personally because we missed our pickup times. And then we decided as a team that we were going to credit them back for all of the charges and shipping that took place. And while we didn't need to do that, we wanted to do that because they had 150 orders that went out in duplicate. They had cost of lost revenue. They had, additional shipping charges, and it ended up, totaling over $5,000. But it was a way for us to show up for our customer or for our partner and say, hey, listen, we're both in this together in the long run. let's try and resolve this. We also had a call yesterday with a really exciting startup that we're really excited to bring to market, and we're in the final stages of their RFQ process. So they narrowed it down to GrowthSpoke and another candidate, and for them, they needed to solve how the returns process looked like, and their model is we build kits, we send kits out to direct to consumer customers, and then it's a water testing kit, so they fill it with their water and send it to a third party lab for analysis. So there's a lot of different moving componentry in this, and we spent over 2 hours with our team and their team really nailing down the process and how communication would look to their customer. And I think ultimately that's what's going to win the RFQ for us.
Okay. It's interesting. It's one thing I really noticed, and I love, by the way, is that you refer to your partners as partners and not customers. And that's something you don't really see a lot. Let me ask you this. It's such a broad space. There's so many different things to uncover and learn. What was the last time that you'd say you really learned something new in the space, whether it was with customers, with other 3PLs, not necessarily just in terms of solely operations happening in the warehouse, but whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think that almost happens daily is we're exposed. One of the coolest parts about what I do on a daily basis is, besides serving as CEO, I also oversee all of our sales as well. So I personally interact with every single brand partner that is considering GrowthSpoke. That's where it starts from. So it doesn't start here and then you only talk to the CEO or the person at the head when something's really go wrong. So with that, I get to learn all of our founders' story. The cool thing about our industry is that every single brand at one point in time was a startup, and the founders have a story. The why, what's their why? So I get to understand what their why is, and we've got 165 different partner brands today, and I can sit here and tell you verbatim what every single one of their stories are. And that's there are some times where we don't meet with the founder if there's a team that's built out, but I still get to learn their story. I understand what their why is, what their mission is, and I just continue to be blown away that the American dream is not dead. And I'm using that we've got partners from all over the world, but the creativity and the ingenuity that exists out there is at a mind-blowing rate. And the really exciting part is that I would venture to say that probably more than 75% of the brands that we partner with have founders that are 35 and under. So having 3 kids myself that are 19, 18, and 17 and as they begin their adulthood and their careers, it's just really, really cool to see how the younger generations not only continue to be creative, but the risk that they are willing to take to bring something they're passionate about to market.
Awesome. And do you find that for you, being so involved and understanding their story and their raison d'être, their why, do you find that makes it easier for you to provide them with a solution?
I really do. I have an entrepreneurial background. I've had 13 startups, 11 successful exits. So I've sat in their shoes, maybe not in their particular space or with their product category, but I've traveled the road that they're on, or the road that they're going to be on next. So I think that really just think it produces authentic conversations that can really help them. Also, when I go out and announce to our team that we've landed a new brand or partner, I take that passion out there with me to tell them, because your average warehouse associates that's picking and packing orders, they don't have any idea what the story is behind the brand or what their mission is. So when one of our partners gets into Target for the first time, or even when their first order goes out, we celebrate that as a team. So we have I'm really proud of the communication that we have internally here at GrowthSpoke, but it's really taking the brand story outside of my office, taking it out to the warehouse floor and saying, hey guys, so-and-so just landed a fantastic opportunity with Costco. Here's how we can best support them. It's so much more than just the daily operational aspect of a 3PL that I think really sets us apart.
That's awesome. And I mean, it's one thing I'm very happy about this partnership is, like you mentioned, your communication within your teams is fantastic, and I'm very excited to help build on how we can communicate that to the external environment, and really the kind of the care you have with your partners, what you're offering them. I want to pivot this. We're almost done. This has been great so far. I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit as to the technological side. So like WearMatch, there's been a massive influx over the past few years of these different digital marketplaces, call it matchmakers, lead gens, whatever you want to call them. I want to get your opinion on kind of the landscape out there as an expert in the space, as the CEO of a 3PL, the general value you find that these companies do provide, but also where you think that they kind of miss the mark.
Another great question. So we currently participate with, I'll call it 3 different matchmakers, if you would. And every one of these platforms has different different ways they go about it. And there's also different pricing and rev share as well. What I typically find is that the brand or the matchmaking platforms that are out there, they're a marketing company at the end of the day, and they have found their niche on how to get brands that are searching for 3PLs kind of into their platform or into their marketplace. And then it becomes a data collection. So here is 20 different fields to fill out, and then we're going to take your data and we're going to match you up with, we're going to send it out to 10 or 20 different 3PLs that fit your criteria, and then it's up for them to review the data, select that they want the opportunity, in which we typically pay for at that time, and then there's a handoff, and the handoff piece is what's missing here. And that's what can be the most greatly improved, to where they've identified 3 or 4 different 3PLs that fit the opportunity. An email is sent out introducing the 2 parties together, and then they take their hands off the wheel because they've been paid. So I think there's a lack of follow-up. Hey, ABC Widget Company, we matched you up with these 3 different 3PLs. How's it going so far? Where's the tracking for metrics after that handoff has happened? Because I would say about 70% of the time, an initial phone call isn't even scheduled. And so now we've paid for that lead, and it disappears into thin air. The other thing I think is just understanding what 3PLs need in order to be able to provide pricing. So matchmakers are going to create this, let's fill out these 20 questions, and then we'll send that data set off to those that want to bid on it. And we're missing so much there. For one, we're missing the story. We're missing where they're at in their growth development. And these matchmaking services that exist out there, for the most part, I'll call them just bidding platforms, to where now we're just talking about price. We're making price the number one piece in the conversation. And so we're very hesitant to participate with those types of matchmakers. I think the real value can come in when a company like WearMatch is not only looking to build out the portfolio of all the different 3PLs, showcase really, really well what they're good at, other than just the metrics that we all stand by, and then engage with that brand or company to see that they land with the right 3PL, or help them to be able to say, hey, I've got 3 different proposals here. Help me break this down. Right. So that's one of the things that we offer. If we've got a brand that's shopping or looking at multiple different 3PLs, we're all going to provide our pricing. And then it's really difficult for them to compare apples to oranges. So, that's where we'll come in and say, hey, listen, if you're willing to be transparent, we're willing to show you where, we're high, where we're low. Let's see how this really, really affects you long term. And then let's analyze all of the different hidden costs that aren't being shown right now, or you're not thinking about.
Okay, it's a very interesting point, because when you think of, call it the comparison aspect, usually when you're comparing different options, you compare either it's the qualitatives or the quantitatives. But in this industry, it's ultimately both, and it's what's more important. Right, there might be one. It depends on, again, like you mentioned, where you're at in your growth stage, right? Can you afford to pay X percentage more because they're a better fit on paper, or are we at a stage now where really maybe we're just looking for a transactional partner? So that's kind of the question that we find a lot of brands will ask, and they don't really know. That's something where we're trying to give them guidance, same thing as you guys would. But yeah, it's very interesting. It's a few points that I'm definitely going to bring up with the team. And I mean, that's one thing that I find great about this partnership is it's, as much as we can build and develop, we can't do that without people like yourself giving us valuable feedback, insights. So I want to thank you very much for your time. This was great. I got to learn a lot. I think the people watching this will learn a lot about not only yourself, but what you guys do at GrowthSpoke. I don't know if I'm allowed to sell you guys, but if I were looking for a 3PL, I'm going right to you first. But yeah, no, thank you very much.
Yeah, Matt, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you what the cool thing is that since we began this partnership with WearMatch, not only have I interacted with you and Ryan and Jacob, and like your team continues to reach out to us and say, hey, where can we improve? Or how do we strengthen this partnership so that we can add real value to you? And that, I'll be honest with you, I have not had that experience with any other of your competitors. So kudos to you guys and the approach that you're taking.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Look, we're at the end of the day, we're also a startup. So the more we can grow with our partners, like you mentioned, you do with your logistics partners, same way we could do that here. It's ultimately mutually beneficial, and we can create, call it the largest, best ecosystem possible for everyone involved.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
You guys are figuring out what others are unwilling to. I appreciate that.
That's the goal. Thank you very much.